Have you got one of these? You know how to use it? Want to learn how to use it better? Think it's just for home movies? There's enough consumer video equipment available right now for you to start your own television station. Welcome to Successful Home Video. This is an 8-part series, and we're going to go all the way from basic camera and editing techniques all the way to advanced camera and editing techniques. As well, we're going to show you some professional stuff too, like pre- and post-production. Post-production is where you edit your tape and you add music and narration. Home video has just exploded in the last few years. In some cases, the quality is getting so good, we look at the picture and we say, was that shot with a home camera? And in other cases, networks and TV stations are using home video formats for news and documentaries. If you're interested in making any kind of a video, a family video, a travel video, a drama, a documentary, a wedding video, a business or training video, even a music video, you'll probably enjoy this series. We assume you've already read all your equipment manuals 3 times over and would like to find out more about video making, video hardware, and the tricks of the trade. This first program, Camcorder Basics, covers how to use the built-in mic on the camcorder, the viewfinder and what all that stuff inside the viewfinder means, prevent camcorder shake using tripods and hand-holding techniques. We'll explain how to set your white balance from daylight to artificial light, and show you how to use the zoom effectively. The assignment in this program will be to transfer your snapshots to video, whether they be prints or slides. We'll show you how. We'll even look at some basic editing. The following programs will cover basic video making and directing with editing in mind. We'll go out on location and make a visual essay, and learn how to edit in a camcorder as we shoot. We'll introduce you to photographic techniques so that you can get the best out of your camcorder. We'll examine audio recording and preparing for the final sound mix, where you add music, sound effects, and narration. In advanced camcorder, you'll learn how to use filters, how to move using a variety of equipment. You'll be shown special lighting techniques and special visual effects. There's plenty to see and learn in video editing, from editing effects to editing techniques. You'll be able to apply all this to making any form of video, whether it's a documentary, an instructional video, or a mad pace video where you spend the day chasing a bride and groom. A family video will last forever, so it's worth doing well. We'll also get you prepared for your travel video. We think you'll find this series a great help in understanding the world of videography. But first, let's get back to basics. Now I want you to go and find out what every single button on the camcorder does. I don't care. Find them underneath, under here, under there, hiding under the viewfinder. Know what every button does. Why? Well, even if there's stuff on the camcorder you never intend to use, like maybe the titling or date superimposition, one day you're going to push the wrong button, and one of those features will become engaged, and you'll have to know how to undo it. And it's a good idea to have just tried every feature once so that you're familiar with how it works. I'm going to just do something you should do too. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to just put the video from this camera into the big monitor. This is a great thing to do because that lets you have a great big picture while you get familiar with what everything does. That way you can experiment with, say, the color balancing system and the autofocus system. See how they perform. Now, among the highlights that you'll need to know are how to turn the autofocus off. Believe me, autofocus is a special effect. It rarely focuses on what you want to focus. For instance, you're shooting a shot of a building and there are people walking in front of it. Every time a person walks in front of the camcorder, the thing focuses on the person and the building goes out of focus. So learn to focus yourself. Then there's the white balance, which controls the color. You've probably seen this picture before, right? My face is the right color, but the reflections in the table and the whole scene out the window are all blue. That's because every different kind of a light source, whether it's tungsten or daylight, fluorescent, mercury vapor, or sodium,
has a drastically different color to it, and electronic cameras have to be able to compensate for that one way or another. It's called white balance. Now, our camera is a little different than yours because we can store a few different white balance settings. So let's compensate for the daylight. Okay, see now the window's the right color and the reflection of the table's nice, but my face has gone kind of much more gold because of all that blue that we're compensating for. I guess we better put that back here. We'll just zoom in on this and push the white balance button. There. We told the camera that that was white and it had the tungsten light falling on it, so it believed us. Your camera will have one of two main methods of auto white balance. In this case, this camera has a white translucent window, and it takes the color of the light that's falling on that window and adjusts the camera's picture accordingly. Other cameras use a through-the-lens automatic white balance system that seems to work perfectly. Whatever the system, though, you very likely have the ability to override that auto white balance. On this particular camera, if you push the white balance button and look in the viewfinder, you see a small fluorescent tube, a light bulb, and a sun appearing, indicating that it's balanced for that. It's a really good idea to connect your camera to a color monitor and experiment with all those white balance settings, because there's not necessarily a right white balance setting, and color is so important to the photographic statement that you make. You can be experimental and learn what it does under various circumstances. As a matter of fact, we were having quite a ball just changing the picture by telling our camera that various different things were white. Here. Okay. I look like a pickle. Funny, I don't feel like a pickle.
Karina looks nice lit by daylight, unless, of course, you made the mistake of setting your camera to tungsten. Believe it or not, these goats are not really blue, but actually white. They've been photographed incorrectly with the tungsten setting when it should have been the daylight setting. You're probably using a black and white viewfinder, making it hard to judge color. Sometimes it's good to use a portable color monitor, and it sure beats looking through the viewfinder for an extended period of time.
Okay, the title of this section is, when you're using your camcorder and you're recording, you look through here. Now, there's more than you might expect to know about the viewfinder on the camera. First and foremost, it's a tiny little TV set, a video monitor in there, and you're looking at it through a lens. There's an adjustment to set the focus for your eye, because after all, your eye can't focus that close, on that little TV monitor. Now, these focuses don't interact, the one on the camera and the one in the viewfinder. You can't, say, defocus the picture there and focus it up using the camcorder lens. There's a video monitor in between that whole optical system. So even if you're just shooting a blob out of focus with the camera, you can usually focus the viewfinder by looking at all the writing that's in there. And you'll find a position where the writing is the sharpest. Then you know you've got that thing set okay. Now, some people have trouble looking through the viewfinders at first because they don't look straight down the barrel. Now, some viewfinders are more forgiving than others, but in this case, if I have the camera at that, I can't even see the viewfinder at all at that angle. So look straight down the barrel. Then use it with this eye. That's the way the camera was designed. And to start with, close your other eye. Although it's a great skill to learn to open that other eye periodically if you're, say, waiting for someone to walk into your frame and you don't want to know where they are. It's a darn good skill, and it's pretty weird, actually. Now, you don't have to use your viewfinder like this, up at eye level straight. Most all of them at least tilt up so that you can get down to, say, a kid's level. It's also a much more stable way to hold the camera, I find. Some viewfinders actually tilt down for getting those high shots, and this one does something I'd never seen before. It comes off. In case you want to get those high shots. This is mighty bizarre, I'll tell you. Now, in the viewfinder screen on that little video monitor, there's all sorts of information. It's going to tell you if you're recording or not recording, and if the battery's low, and the time and date superimposition, and just about anything can show up in a viewfinder.
In the good old days, video viewfinders had a simple red light that showed you whether or not you're recording. Today, the light's been replaced with on-screen graphics that indicate recording, whether the autofocus is turned on, and sometimes the zone of active autofocus. As well, you get the status of the fader, the tape speed, and if the color balance has been set for daylight, fluorescent, or tungsten. The viewfinder will also indicate backlight status, digital effect status, shutter speed if not normal, and of course, the time and the date, which never seems to be set quite right. Some viewfinders even display sound recording levels. and mine has a hilariously phrased warning that the battery is dead. Best of all, if you can figure out how to turn off most of the graphics, you can even see the picture that you're recording.
Normally when we're out shooting, we use that free light in the sky, the sun. Normally we don't pay much attention to its position, but watch this. I'm going to go a full 360 degrees around. Notice how the mood and the quality of the picture changes depending on the relative position of the sun, the camera, and the subject. You'll notice if you're shooting on the water that the color of the water will change. The color of the sky may change. And it's amazing the range of things you can create just with your position. Normally we tend to get focused on what we're shooting and not really pay attention to the angle of the sun, but you can go a lot further if you just take a look around. All consumer camcorders offer some sort of a zoom lens. The rule of thumb for the zoom lens is don't use it. You might remember older television cameras that had the 3 or 4 lenses on the front, and the camera person had to select the correct one for the shot they wanted. The intention of the zoom lens originally was to merely automate this into a smooth, infinite series of lenses. And you'll probably do a lot better photography if you think of your zoom as a collection of lenses. Like all collections of lenses, the ones that offer the most magnification also have the most critical focus. So the way to use the zoom is to zoom all the way into the subject, focus, and then zoom out to the shot you want. As long as the distance stays constant between the subject and the camera, the zoom will then track its focus throughout its entire range. Now you can capitalize on the reverse of all of this if the subject, say, starts to walk towards you. If you subtly zoom out to keep the shot size the same, the lens focus will also become less critical at the same time, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, there are some ways to use a zoom lens properly for effect.
When you zoom to a more telephoto position, the focus becomes more critical. You can use this effect to help the foreground subject stand out. A zoom can help single out a subject or object and tell the viewer where you want them to look. But in the time you're zooming, you could have had several different, more interesting shots. Use the zoom sparingly.
I've always been impressed with how well these camcorder microphones work. They seem to work as well as microphones that cost us a couple $100 or more. Now, this isn't a fake demonstration. You're actually hearing my voice from this microphone. We've hooked the signal from the earphone out into our camcorder. It's a good idea to get to know your microphone. For instance, this one's pretty directional. It doesn't get anything from the sides or behind the camera. Other microphones may vary. As good as these microphones are, they're not miracle workers. The farther away you get from them, the more the background sounds will seem to intrude. It's okay in quiet locations like this, but when the traffic comes, I could be completely drowned out. You can't trust your ears when you're recording sound either, because your brain has a remarkable ability to filter out unwanted noises. So for that reason, it's a good idea to take one of the 5 or 6 sets of headphones you already have around the house and find one that works well with your camcorder. It's just another case in television of closer being better. Just a quick survey shows that there are about 1 million different kinds of tripods and about 1,000 different things to say about each one, which is 1 billion things to say about tripods. So rather than go through all that, we decided to just start at the top of one at random and work our way down. Up at the top, this one has a very nifty feature, a quick release plate. This is handier than you can imagine right now, but it's a good feature to look for. The plate bolts onto the camera, and then thereafter, the thing goes on and off the tripod head with just a snap. Moving down, you got your go up and downer and your go sidewayser, the pan and tilt mechanism. They're calling a lot of these smaller, cheaper heads fluid heads. In professional stuff, those are $3,000 heads that use a viscous fluid forced through a tiny hole to develop that nice friction that you feel for smooth panning and tilting. Well, these may not be actual fluid heads, but they operate like fluid heads, so it doesn't matter. They seem to be very smooth and nice. Make sure when you're shopping that you get one that's using the same quality mechanism for tilting as it is for panning, because some of them cheat and use kind of a rough, terrible friction mechanism on the pan while still having a smooth one on the tilt. So don't get caught by that. Now, what size legs do you need? Well, don't just say, well, I have a 2-pound camera, so I need a tripod that'll carry 5 pounds. There's more to it than that. Obviously, a 50-pound camera is going to crush that 5-pound tripod. But the real thing about the stability of the tripod is you should buy whatever you can afford financially and whatever you can afford in weight to carry around. Get the biggest, because even though your tripod may be capable of physically holding the weight of your camera, the lighter ones are quite wobbly, especially if you're out in the wind using a very tight lens. Moving down to the bottom, this one's equipped with an optional dolly. The dollies are just terrific. You might anticipate working around banquet halls or great big level places where it's a snap to roll your camera from place to place. This one has an additional feature of being able to raise its wheels and lower itself right to the floor for stability when you don't want to move. And the thing that can really make a dolly magic is if you figure out how to add some sort of a platform to carry all the rest of your stuff. The next best thing to a tripod is a monopod. It collapses to make it more portable. However, your macro and telephoto shots will probably be shaky, as it's not as sturdy as a tripod. Another good alternative is to find a sturdy surface to rest your camera on. This takes a bit of practice. If you want to get a shot looking up, you can wedge a book or your hands under the camera. Leaning against a post or a tree can also give you some extra stability. Remember, the wider the lens, the less shaky the shot. I tried this low angle to avoid the camera's shadow from the setting sun, but I couldn't quite get low enough, as you can see. This is a handheld shot. It's working okay because of my wide angle setting. If I wanted to zoom in, I would have needed a tripod. Okay, this is your last assignment for this program. It's the archival legacy. Transfer all those old family photographs to videotape. Now, I can think of a dozen or maybe a million reasons why this is a good idea, but the highlights include finally getting all of the family photos in one spot and being able to reframe and recrop. For instance, this photograph's the wrong shape for the television frame, but I actually like this one a lot better if I zoomed in to just the face. The third reason to do all this is that finally you'll be able to have everybody in the family have a copy of the tape of all those photographs. It's a lot cheaper than having a copy of all those photographs. Now, I've got a close-up attachment on the end of the camera that's letting me work at this distance. It's a nice way to work, but if you don't have a close-up attachment, you'll just have to invent a slightly different camera position that does allow you to get the size of photograph you want. I'm also using the world's best graphic stand. It's actually, oh yeah, it's a piano, that's what it is. But I just use it as a graphic stand because it has a perfect stage for holding the photographs, and the light that's always on a piano above that stage is also in a perfect position because of the incidence of reflection and refraction and well, who understands all that geometry? The point is that with the light at this extreme angle above, the glare from the photograph is actually somewhere down here on the floor rather than coming straight into the camera lens. Just about perfect. If you don't have a piano, you'll have to invent a stack of books and a board or anything that allow you to prop those photographs up. You might have a tripod that allows you to tilt far enough that you're looking straight down at the floor, and that's not a bad way to work either. If curly photographs are a problem, try a simple small sheet of glass from the hardware store with the edges taped for safety. You'll be able to put that glass on there, and the weight of the glass will flatten the curly photographs. This is a kind of a novel way to transfer slides to video. It's a doodad that screws onto the end of the camcorder lens, and it has a white translucent window here that you just have to point any old light at. The slide's in there. Then there's some optics in the barrel that allow you to still use the zoom and focus of your camcorder to recrop the slides. It's pretty neat. Now, you don't have to run out and buy one of these to transfer slides. You can simply do it by pointing your slide projector at a white wall in your house and pointing the camcorder at it. Just a couple things to be aware of. One, a lot of popular slide projectors are brighter in the center of the image than they are at the edges. Some people just put up with this, but you might want to try a couple of slide projectors if you have the option and see which has the flattest field of light. The other tip is you won't be able to shoot the image exactly flat on, so there are going to be some focus problems. Therefore, you want the image as bright as possible. Therefore, make the projected image as small as you can comfortably get away with. And then nestle the camcorder as close to the slide projector as possible to minimize those focus variations. You'll find it works quite well. More sophisticated transfer equipment is available depending on your budget.
This equipment transfers either slides or negatives to video and can be coupled to a small effects board that can crop or add color borders and backgrounds to your pictures. You simply connect it to a VCR to record while watching the picture on a monitor.
Now, if you're just coming to home video from, say, still photography or, worse yet, that old 8mm stuff that used film, it's important to remember that videotape is almost free per minute. It costs you very little to make a recording. As well, it's reusable. So what you have to do now is just go shoot, experiment, zoom, focus, pan, have a ball, come back and look at it. If you don't like it, record over it. And as you do that, you'll get better and better.
You may want to condense all of your material down to your best stuff. Then you're going to need to edit. Sounds complicated.
There's a simple way to edit. That's connecting the camcorder to the VCR and recording selected pieces over to another tape. Now, don't even bother getting that pencil and paper to write this down, because there are hundreds of camcorders and hundreds of VCRs, and the specifics are different with each piece of equipment. And then you multiply this operation by 2 when you're connecting a different kind of a camcorder to a different kind of a VCR. So we're going to try to hit the highlights and the generalities. For the specifics, you may want to consult the instructions and the papers that came with your equipment. We want to connect video and audio out of this to video and audio in of the VCR. So let's have at it. Now, most camcorders offer right on the body a video and audio out socket, but be careful. These 2 little spigots are doing the work of 4 spigots on this particular camcorder and on many others. So I have to select whether I want them to be ins or outs. We want to take the video out of this machine, so switch it to out. Pretty well all manufacturers have standardized on coloring the video socket yellow. And often the cord that comes with it has a yellow end, so it goes in there, and that's audio out. Great. Now we take our video and our audio on the cable, and we take these 2 wires and we plug them into the, 3 sockets. See, a lot of VCRs are stereo. They have a left and a right audio input. A lot of camcorders only offer you a mono single audio spigot. So, okay, video goes in video. Now, the details will be different for different machines. Some machines are clever enough that if you only plug audio into the, say, left socket, it automatically senses the empty socket and supplies the same audio to both channels. This machine has a switch that has to be set to mono to achieve the same thing. In some cases, you may want to buy a Y cord. That's a small cord that goes from 1 wire branching out to 2 so that you can feed your left and right channels. Okay, plugged in. Line 1 on this machine are a set of sockets on the back, where they are often on most VCRs. Line 2 are the set of sockets on the front, where they always should have been since day 1. And tuner, of course, is that section with the channel numbers that you would select to record or view off air. So we're in line 2. I go to line 2. All right, we should be ready to go.
Next, find the scene you want and cue it up.
Okay. Playing on the camcorder. And that was the end of the stuff I didn't want. Okay. Now, we're poised at the grand moment. The recording machine is set to record but pause, and the playing machine is set to play but pause, and I've already confirmed that my signals are passing in the correct direction. To make the smoothest possible transition, since camcorders usually have a noise bar when they're in pause mode, I actually want to tap pause just a split second before I tap pause on the record machine. And I also had to fool around to figure out how to start the record machine. Some would require you to push record and play at the same time when in pause, etc., etc. You figure it out on your machine. This particular machine will allow a tap of the pause button to continue rolling in the record mode. So I'm ready. I'm going to hit the camcorder, and then lightning fast, as soon as the picture stabilizes, I'm going to hit the one on the recorder. Now, I'm recording the new scene, and there's a great big piece left out. As it turns out, these 2 particular units made by different manufacturers happen to love this setup, and we've done a lot of great recordings with almost no disturbance. Depending on your recorder and its age, it may well do a kind of a sloppy recording when you go from record pause
to record motion, you may find that there's a few seconds of a rainbow pattern going up the screen or something. You're just going to have to discover what you can get away with. Now, I could, if I wanted, make a beautiful edited piece just sitting here with the pause buttons, but there are some difficulties. One is you have to be very lucky to have a machine that will tolerate that record pause thing as neatly as this one does. For another, it's quite tricky to position these machines just using the pause buttons, and especially in the case of camcorders that have such tiny buttons that are hard to press. Oh, go backwards, go forwards. You may want to move up to an edit controller. An edit controller really uses the same system where the player is playing back a tape and you're re-recording it onto another tape, but it allows much finer control of the position of both of the tapes and more convenient monitoring of what the points are. We'll be taking a more in-depth look at editing throughout the series. Well, that's all we have time for, and like good video people, we like to end the day by cleaning our lens, blowing off the fluff, and putting on the lens cap to keep it all nice. Have you got one of these? You know how to use it? Want to learn how to use it better? Think it's just for home movies? There's enough consumer video equipment available right now for you to start your own television station. Okay, you read all the equipment manuals, and you know what every darn button on the camcorder does, and you're quite a video expert. I suspect by now you've also annoyed your family and friends with your camcorder. See, you know that you have an amazing electronic time machine here. It will record things and save them forever. But you've probably also discovered that most people are quite expert television viewers, and they don't want to watch something that's shaky or out of focus, or worst yet, shot by somebody who doesn't know when to say cut. There's always the fast forward button while you're showing it to people, but why not think in terms of using your camera to tell a story? Now, there are levels of approach you can take. You can do an official storyboard, pencil, paper, make a little picture of every shot and how it should advance the story. Or at the other end, you can do what I do, just watch professional news magazine shows to see how they assemble a story visually. Whatever you shoot, try to make sure that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And don't forget that most important element of video: timing. Now, telling a story with a camera isn't as difficult as it seems. Most of the things you'll shoot already have a theme. The birthday party, a boat trip, a school concert, barbecue time, the parade. To learn to be an effective video storyteller, one of the most important lessons you have to learn are the rules of editing. We're going to take a look at a short video that was made by a camcorder enthusiast with a technique that we call in-camera editing. That means knowing when to push the start-stop button at the appropriate moment. Open, close, display, program, time, volume, play. All the editing and effects you're seeing were made in a high-end consumer camcorder while shooting. Pretty sophisticated stuff. The main benefit for editing in camera is that there's no generation loss. We don't have to edit to another tape, which would be a second generation. With each generation of re-recording your video, the picture and sound quality deteriorates. With in-camera editing, you can create some great effects, like dissolving these people on from a freeze frame. The other reason for in-camera editing, apart from the time saved in the edit room, is the fact that you can discipline yourself. You'll be asking yourself, how should I start and end a scene? Should I be wide or close up? Should I pan the camera? How long should this shot be? If you make a mistake, you can always go back and redo the edit. Music will help convey the atmosphere. And remember, good videos don't go on forever. They just fade away. This program is in two parts. The first part is about in-camcorder editing. Part 2 we've titled Directing the Shot. We're going to explain some of the rules of editing throughout the program. In Part 1, in-camcorder editing, we'll have editing a speech, building an action sequence, editing pictures to music, and run-up time. One perfectly good reason for editing is to prevent your audience from falling asleep. I've met a lot of people in my life, but never met one who wanted to watch a 3-hour wedding. Met a couple who thought they wanted to watch a 3-hour wedding until they tried it. At a wedding, you might want to get everybody who makes a speech. It's the nice thing to do, right? But you don't want that accumulated 45 minutes or hour that it's going to take. A way to edit that is to start rolling on a person, they're talking. Now you know what they look like, you know their general attitude and what they have to say. Wait till they get to the end of a thought and push stop. Now let them jabber on all they want for 10 or 20 minutes. And you can always tell when a person is sort of ready to wrap up, because often they say, well, and finally. At that point, you take a shot of the wedding cake or anything on the table, some flowers, a candle, and you wait until they've just hit the end of a sentence, roll again, and bring it back up to the person as they're just finishing their speech. No one will ever miss that 10 or 20 minutes that you cut out. Whenever you're shooting something repetitive, it doesn't have to be an amusement park ride. It could be anything from speeches at a wedding to folk dancing. As long as the action repeats over and over again, you can build up an edited sequence right in your camera by repositioning yourself at various points in the action and waiting for that repetitive moment to come along again. To shoot this sequence properly requires that I not pan with the ride, let it exit a static frame. It's good to plan on what the end shot will be ahead of time. When shooting, it's hard to know where each shot will end exactly, so you might have to record more than you need and wind back to the spot where the next scene should begin. If you want to add more shots later to your sequence, you can record over the original picture, inserting new picture, providing you have an insert edit mode on your camcorder. The first thing to do is to record the musician, both picture and sound, from beginning to end. Then we'll go back and insert edit some pictures, like cutaways of the crowd. If you have a shaky camcorder shot, you can replace it with a better shot. Once you've completed shooting the musician, wind back to the beginning and find where you'd like to insert a new shot. Press the Insert Edit button and you're ready to shoot. Here are my insert shots of the crowd. The soundtrack of the musician remains because when you insert edit, you don't erase the linear soundtrack. You can insert between different pictures over the soundtrack, or you could go back and forth between the musician and the crowd. Be aware of run-up time that your camera might require when making an edit like this. Now, before you run out to use my very inventive wedding shortening technique, there's something you're going to have to learn about your own camcorder. They're all a little different, but virtually all of them do this. They make a beautiful edit when you push the start and stop button. But the way they do that is when you press stop, they roll the tape back a little bit so that The next time you press start, the tape rolls forward in play mode, and then when everything's up to speed, that beautiful edit is made. Now you have to learn how long it takes your camcorder to do this. Otherwise, you'll think you're recording things that you're not, especially those beginnings of those sentences and things. So I'm going to do a little test here. First, I'm just going to roll some video. All right, this is roll up for test number 3. You never saw the other 2 takes. All right, now I stop, and I'm waiting for the tape to wind back. You can actually see it happen right through the little window. All right, I'm going to count to 3, and as I say 1, I'm going to push the record button. 1, 2, 3. I'll push stop. I'm waiting for it to recue. Okay, it's ready. I'm going to do it a few times. 1, 2, 3, and stop. The reason I want to do it a few times is I might actually have a button and finger coordination problem, so I want to get an average. 1, 2, 3. That's the end of our test. Okay, now I'm going to recue this and set it up to play. You make an edit. Roll up for test number 3. You never saw the other 2 takes. All right, now I stop. 3. Push stop. 3. And stop. That's the end of our test. Gaps often bigger than you would imagine. Now, since all camcorders do this to a certain extent and they're all different, you really need to perform that kind of a test with your camera if you want those nice smooth edits at the places where you thought they were going to be. What, part 2 already? Oh, okay, directing the shot. This will have making shot decisions, screen direction, eye lines and the axis, types of shots, pans and tilts, in-camcorder effects, and scene transitions. When you're operating a camcorder, you're wearing many hats. You're a photographer, a director, a sound recordist, and an editor. This will all require a lot of split-level decisions, as there are many components to getting a good shot. This all leads up to making shot decisions. When you're out shooting action and you're the director, you face all these split-second decisions like, should I be at the top here getting these guys going down the slide, or should I be at the end getting them coming down towards me? It doesn't really matter what you decide as long as you've thought about it and there's a reason for your decision. I want to be at the bottom because that way my shot's going to end in a close-up and it'll be more exciting. Come on down. Woo, that was so exciting I almost got hit. Screen direction and eye lines are important. You can mess up your sequence by positioning your camera in the wrong place. Here we've created a nice illusion that Marnie has a twin sister. Well, she doesn't. We simply have the ball going in the right direction. Particular attention should be made to eye line direction between your cuts. Whenever you're shooting cutaways, it's important to be conscious of screen direction. What I mean is this. Here I am looking from left to right. Now, without moving me, just moving the camera, I can be seen to be looking from right to left. Now, screen direction gets mighty important when 2 people are talking to each other, so we're going to fly in a guest at great expense. We have a thing called, hi Fred, we have a thing called the axis. That means that with any action, we draw a line through it and then never cross that line with the camera. In the case of 2 people talking to each other, the axis is pretty straightforward. It's a line that runs from nose to nose and then extends out in as far as you can imagine in both directions. Here's what would happen if we crossed it. Fred, you've been seen dumping toxic stuff into the river. No, that wasn't me. See, Fred and I both end up looking in the same direction now, and no one's sure who's talking to whom. And as a matter of fact, whenever you cross the axis, you usually end up making the viewer's heads do this. Right down the right. Who's he talking to? Where are they? Arg! When shooting sports, always make sure you stay on one side of the action. If you cross the axis, this is what happens. More twins. Okay, assignment. How about a 1 to 2 minute sequence of a running or a chase scene? Now, every shot that you put into that sequence should make you conscious and emphasize screen direction and continuity rules. Some suggested themes might be man chases dog, bicycle race, any kind of a sports game, or maybe a rush hour where things actually rushed. Okay, well, get to it. Oh wait, Wait a minute, don't get to it right now, there's more show left. Sometimes, screen direction can be changed by using a neutral shot. A neutral shot can save you when you're crossing the axis. You can have a major continuity problem when shooting several people around a table. For instance, from this camera angle, Arlene appears to be looking right to left. Now I change my position. She's looking left to right. To remedy all this, we need some cutaways. Hot dogs, flowers. Now we can go back to Arlene looking right to left. Cutaways have saved more than one director's reputation. Now, we're not fond of making you memorize a whole bunch of fancy words, but the following terms are important when organizing your thoughts for shooting. In order to make your videos interesting, it's important to use various shots to establish your scene and things like that. For instance, this is an extreme wide shot, or maybe it's an extreme long shot, or maybe this is an extreme long shot. And then, of course, there's just the plain old long shot or wide shot. And to complete this series of shots, there'd be a medium shot, but this might not quite be a medium shot to everybody. Maybe this is a medium shot. And of course, the essence of television itself is the close-up. But some people actually would feel that this was more of a close-up. The important thing about shots isn't the terminology, what you call them, but that you actually use them to establish your scene and tell your story effectively. I smell a barbecue. When you first see the location, you have to decide where you'd like to frame and what your first shot should be. You might choose the wide picture that you're seeing now, or start with the barbecue in a chronological order of events. Or you could zoom in further and start with a tighter shot that still manages to see a fair bit. We'll call this the medium wide shot. We suggest that you use your zoom mainly to get positioned, then start recording. This shot could be described as a medium-wide 3-shot. And this shot is a medium shot. And this shot's a close-up of a hungry little girl. And here's a close-up of flowers, in case I get in trouble with screen direction. One of the most powerful things about video is movement. And you should always consider some sort of movement, even when your subject itself is static. This is the most common camera move there is. It's called panning. Panning usually refers to moving the camera left and right. Now, I have to share with you my least favorite panning motion because I've seen everybody do it. You know, you've got this magnificent piece of scenery, you zoom out wide and it still doesn't fit, so you're going to pan it. Pan, and you get to the end, and just to make sure you've actually got the whole thing, you pan back over the very thing you've just panned. I call that spray painting. To do a nice pan, you should try to work it out so that you can begin on some sort of interesting frame that you can hold for a few seconds. Then do the pan, being careful not to go so fast that everything becomes a blur. And to make it a really great pan, it should also end on an interesting frame that can be held again for a few seconds. Now, depending on what country you're from and what industry you work in, panning the camera up and down is usually called tilting. And panning and tilting have been the source of endless mirth in the industry because you'll note that when you pan the camera left, the picture actually moves right, and vice versa. The same applies for tilting. For instance, when we tilt the camera up, the picture moves down. Tilt up. Camera movement is a lot of fun, but sooner or later it has to stop. And it's best to work out a way it can do that gracefully. If you're following someone with the camera, it's best to stop the camera and let them walk out of frame. Now, if you intend to edit what you shoot later, you should hold at the beginning and end of any camera movement for a lot longer than you would normally. You know, hold for 10 seconds, do the camera move, and hold for another 10 seconds. That way you've got 3 different ways you can use that shot in the edit room later. In any event, if you have any kind of a camera move that's the end of a sequence, you should also hold at the end of that move for a few seconds. And remember, when people are walking away from you, let them exit a static frame. Don't pan with them. Another type of pan you've probably seen on the old Batman TV shows. We like to call it a whip pan. Here I am on a city street, and here I am at the beach. Of course, no one else is here at the beach. And here I am back on the city street. So it's important for you, the director, to tell you, the camera person, how long shots should last and where they should start and finish. Often the action will dictate this for you, but sometimes there is no action. a static shot of a beach or a mountain. In those cases, you just have to develop a feel for how long the shot should last. Timing is integral to editing and directing. But there's good news. Videotape is cheap and it's reusable, so why not practice? Practice making a camera move that actually says something, and then play them back to make sure you're giving the viewer enough time to appreciate what it is you're trying to say. And watch television. Your average $1 million network documentary usually has the timing right. When you're editing right in the camera, you often have various devices right at your fingertips that will help you enhance your sequences. Most cameras can fade to and from black and or white, and depending on the model, you might have some digital effects that you can use for transitions. A dissolve is one of the best in-camera transitional effects. It actually helps awkward cuts and can act as a passage of time. This strobe effect gives a feeling of slow motion. Here's an effect with a freeze and a partial wipe. Watch what happens. By now, you know that there are an awful lot of fancy transitions you can do right within some of the more expensive cameras. But no matter whether you have a fancy, expensive camera or a very simple, basic one, scene transitions are going to be important to you. They're a way to begin and end your scenes. And the scene transitions are sort of like the punctuation in a language. For instance, the visual equivalent of a period is the fade to black. Goodbye. Wait, come back. We're not done with transitions yet. The transition I find myself most often using is the tilt from the sky. The sky is pretty handy to use because it's usually there outdoors. And of course, once you've mastered the tilt from the sky, if you want to end a scene, there's always the tilt to the sky. Walking into an empty frame is always handy, as is the reverse, walking out. Don't forget there are several ways to come into a frame. Now, every transition we've just shown involves a simple cut, something you can do with any camcorder. And these are bread and butter cuts. They're used all the time. There are fancier cuts you can make too. There are all sorts of great cuts you can think up. As a matter of fact, if this one doesn't work, you'll never see it. But what the heck, it's videotape. Now, I don't want to distress anyone, but I can't really do that in real life. There are just millions of ways that you can think to make a simple transition that will begin or end a scene. As a matter of fact, I have to end this scene. And since the camera's now locked in one position, I think I know how to do it. Get a load of this. I'm fading. Remember this from the beginning of the show? This is your assignment. Make an in-camera visual essay. If you don't have a fancy camera, simple cuts will do. The subject could be your street, your town, the fall fair, whatever. To help you out, we gave this assignment to a videographer. Then we took our camera and followed him around.
Do you always figure out right away what the first shot is to take? How do you establish this kind of
Well, that's the fun thing about video. It's not till you actually turn up on location that you really know what you're going to do. So you wait around, you find something interesting, see how people are reacting to you and whatnot. And when people are feeling comfortable, something just comes to you. Like the road sign here, help establish a shot. Lets us know where we are.
No, don't let me stop you taking the shot.
Okay.
This effect is simply a wipe on a freeze frame. Show me the effects that come with your camcorder.
Well, this one here can just freeze an image, so you can tape it. And you can do different things with that freeze by pushing this button several times. This here will just strobe. A lot of people like to see a picture strobing. You might get someone dancing.
That's like a series of stills?
Yeah, and it looks interesting. Here, if we push this button, it freezes at the end of the scene that we shot, and it dissolves or wipes to the next shot, depending on how many times we push this button here.
See, it freezes when you push stop on the camcorder button.
That's right. And this one up here is if there's not enough light, say inside your house around a birthday cake, somebody turned down the lights, if we push that button, we'd have enough light.
I never take my tripod along because I'm always, it's an extra hassle, but I notice that you're a lot more regular at using a tripod.
Yeah, I guess it's just the mood I'm in today. Sometimes just on my shoulder is the most fast and interesting way of capturing something. If I have this tripod, people might start running away from me or something. So today I'm in a tripod mood. And it's a different picture altogether.
You can get a lot more close-ups that way too as well.
Yeah.
When shooting close-ups or macros, a tripod prevents a shaky picture. Noticing detail and getting more close-ups than wide shots makes for a more interesting video. Look out for abstract shots and textures that can also tell the story.
You don't look too happy.
No, I just did a shot here and I didn't like it at all. I made 3-4 mistakes here, so I'm just backing up. And I eliminated the scene, and I'm going to change it and put a different one in here. Normally I'd take this out in editing, but today I'm doing an in-camera edit, so I'm going to put this instead of that last scene.
Now nobody will ever see his mistake.
What you looking for?
Interesting faces.
There's nothing more interesting than a human face. If you can, use a long telephoto lens to get those candid shots from far away.
Well, Peter's off making his video, and I'm standing here like an idiot wishing I brought a camcorder, because this reminds me of the Caribbean. There's nowhere you can take a bad shot in this particular market. Everything's so interesting. I know for my plan, I would establish the market by showing a few wide shots of the streets and the people, but then I'd be excited to concentrate on all the little details, you know. I saw a shot where a patent leather shoe was reflecting a dead chicken, and there's a wonderful signage. For instance, there are signs all over the place that say meat market. As a matter of fact, that very market over there has a sign that says all meat refrigerated, and right below it, sitting on a board, obviously not refrigerated, is all the meat. Most of the stores proclaim cheap this, or best prices, or most unusual thingamajig. There are also varieties of fruits and vegetables I've never seen before. There's a wonderful thing over. Why didn't I bring my camera? Look at that. There's a thing over there that says checkerboard with 2 great big eyeballs.
Even though we're editing on the fly, music and narration could still be added later. Peter chose to close his visual essay by coming full circle to the street sign where he began.
And I'm finished.
So that ending shot kind of comes full circle, was the sign, right?
Yeah.
Have you had any, like, that's one way to end this piece, but when you're doing a travelogue, have you had any other great ending shots that are memorable?
Yeah, I think you just have to look for inspiration on that day. And usually that's a person you might encounter and wants to talk to or something. So they'll give you a nice smile or a wave, or they'll say, I'll see you later or something, and then that's it.
When we first started to put together this half-hour program, it came in at about 46 minutes. It was only after some additional editing that we were able to get it down to you at the correct length. Unfortunately, one of the things that went was my brilliant speech about how creative editing can save an entire program by changing the pace, you know, by just moving one edit a couple of frames. That was a great speech, but that's editing, and that's all we have time for. Cut! Have you got one of these? You know how to use it? Want to learn how to use it better? Think it's just for home movies? There's enough consumer video equipment available right now for you to start your own television station.
Okay, successful home video. In this program, we're going to look at how some of the advanced techniques that are used in still photography can be applied to video. And you'll find out that lighting is an integral part of shooting good video. And how much light does a camera need, and why is that so, and why is the darn picture gone too blue or too amber? We'll be taking a lot of shots of family, a birthday party, a family dinner, a family outing, baby shots, and there'll be some assignments that you can try at your leisure. First, we'd like to show you an array of camcorder equipment. You'll be amazed at how many accessories are available for your camcorder. So, it's off to the video store. Find a good video store that has a wide variety of accessories and knowledgeable salespeople who can offer you genuine advice. We talked to Fred Conkin, who showed us that the choices are endless. From camcorder lights to additional sound equipment, directional microphones, wireless ones. The first accessory to buy for your camcorder is an ultraviolet filter to protect the lens from dirt and scratches. It also helps reduce haze. Add to that special filters to enhance the look of your video. This prism filter divides the picture into 5 images. Not only are there a lot of accessories, there are a lot of brand names to choose from. You have to become an educated consumer. Decide which is the best product for you and what fits into your budget. You don't have to buy all the accessories at once. You'll find yourself returning to the store, and probably you'll discover a new product you never even heard about before. This is a camcorder controller that will follow you around using a remote sensing device. For the videographer who has everything, now there's finally a place to put it all. Actually, next year there'll be a camcorder that fits in this pocket. There's already one that fits in this pocket. Monthly magazines are another good source of information. They offer news and reviews of the latest products you might be interested in. And they also offer some good tips. Seems like every time I come into the store, I end up buying yet another accessory or a doodad. But it's important to remember that you don't have to go broke buying everything in the store to do a good job or to have fun with video. My own camcorder is the simplest model imaginable. Even our professional gear doesn't have any of those whiz-bang goodies on it. As a matter of fact, it would probably be pretty handy to have a fade out to black button right now. Well, there's always this. It's kind of funny, but people are often surprised to discover that the techniques of photography can be applied to video. But a better understanding of photography will really help the look of your videos. Good photography doesn't merely comprise composition and lighting. It also has to do with a choice of subjects, theme, design, style, color, texture. And photography comes in many levels as well. They're all the way from the dirty, gritty documentary look to commercial quality. And each particular technique talks to us in a different way. When you compose or frame a subject, you're considering where you want the viewer to look. Each shot dictates how long it should be by its content and quality of the composition. Here, we're reflecting on bygone ways of a pioneer village, so our shots are at a slower pace. Look for interesting camera angles. Compare these 2 different shots, one with the driver or the driver's point of view. You might want to use one or perhaps both. The composition of a moving subject can go from good to bad. That's why we're letting our subject exit the frame. A wide shot establishes the location, and close-ups tell the story. Try to get as many different close-ups from different camera angles as possible. Don't just leave your camcorder on a wide shot. When you position your subjects, you're creating a composition. It's kind of like creating a sculpture of shapes, colors, and textures. Notice that when a person moves, your eye is drawn to them, affecting the dynamics of the composition. Just say "now" when you feel it's the right composition. When you're shooting a single person, you can have different compositions. Pick one you like, a medium shot, a closer shot, or a tighter close-up. Notice that Karina's face is not central. There's some airspace on the left. If we pull back, we can still keep the framing with that airspace, camera left. Is this too much airspace? Is this good composition? I think it is, but it depends on the type of video you're making, so you really have to look before you shoot. When the subject moves, you have to be prepared to adjust for the best composition. Here we have to lose that airspace. When you're hand-holding the camera, the composition decision becomes more crucial, as you have to act fast, especially with movement. You have to be prepared for the unexpected. So use your other eye to see what's around you. Not only because you might trip on something, but somebody might walk in front of you. Hey, excuse me, excuse me.
You ever see the great Hollywood directors and other people in our business do this with their fingers? They're making an impromptu viewfinder, and they can adjust the size of their shot by moving their hands. It's a very handy technique. In actual fact, though, I find it a little pretentious, so I only do it when no one's looking. This is a high-angle shot. It makes some sort of a statement. It's very dramatic, but should be used sparingly. It's also bizarre because it makes people look kind of short and fat, and as you know, I'm actually tall and thin. As bizarre as this shot is, it's exactly what most people do when they're videotaping kids. They shoot from their own eye level, which is, you know, even higher than mine, and looking down on them, giving that same bizarre shot. It's much better to get you and your camera right down there with the kids to see how they see the world. Of course, don't go so low that you're looking up their nose. Eye level usually works just about right. Okay, how can I make you laugh? Oh, it didn't take much.
This angle is called a Dutch tilt. Not only is it dramatic, but you can fill the frame better with tall buildings or tall people. Depth of field is the amount of focus between the foreground and the background. You can change the depth of field two ways, either with the amount of light or the use of the zoom lens set on telephoto position. First, the aperture controls the amount of light. If there's a lot of light, the aperture of the lens becomes smaller and gives you a greater depth of field. The less light, the less depth of field. So in low light situations, the focus becomes more critical. Also, notice how sharp the background is on the wide angle setting. When you zoom in to a telephoto position, the background is soft because there's less depth of field. The background is now out of focus.
One of the problems with home video cameras that never gets any press is the problem of having too much light, and it often happens outside on a sunny day. The problem is that these cameras are incredibly sensitive, and outside they're working with their lens stopped down to almost nothing. Now, you've probably noticed that professional photography and feature films and things, the pictures often look a lot more rich than what you're able to get with a camcorder. One of the things is depth of field. The professionals know that they want to have the iris in their lens opened up to as big a hole as possible so that there's only a very narrow plane of focus. So in the case of a model, the face will be in focus, but the background will be all out of focus. Or looking over a bunch of flowers, only the key subject is in focus and everything else becomes a nice blend of color. One way to cut down the light that comes into your camcorder is a neutral density filter. I happen to have some here. Now, this neutral density stuff is designed to put over windows if they're in the scene and they're too bright. The reason it's called neutral density is it doesn't affect color. It's neutral. It's just dense. You can buy neutral density filters that also screw on the end of your camcorder lens, or you can cut this stuff up and tape it on. A cheap, quick solution, if you don't have a neutral density filter, is to use the shutter button on the camera as well, because as you decrease the exposure time using the shutter button, the lens is forced to open up on the auto exposure system to compensate for the additional amount of light that it requires. Now, the shutter button would be a perfect solution to that, and we could throw away neutral density forever, except that using the shutter, of course, you get that additional very sharp-edged motion, and you have to make sure you can tolerate that before you use the shutter button.
The high shutter speed helps when the picture is frozen. Each frame is fairly sharp considering the speed of the ride. This is useful in sports. You can study your swing. Frozen at a normal speed of a 60th, you see blur, but at a higher shutter speed, the freeze frame is much sharper. It's great for studying your golf or tennis swing. Remember though, high shutter speeds need a lot of light.
One of the things that will greatly influence your background and your foreground is the distance between the camera and the subject, and consequently, what part of the zoom range you're going to use. Right now, the camera's about as far away from me as the length of a Greyhound bus. Consequently, to get the shot, it's on a fairly tight lens, shooting at a fairly narrow angle. And also because it's a tight lens, the background is out of focus because focus is more critical. If we move the camera forward, you should notice quite a difference. The camera's now been brought about the distance of a small car away. To keep me the same size, the zoom lens has had to be zoomed out. So consequently, the lens is now using a much wider angle of view. And because when the lens is zoomed out with a wide angle of view, the focus is less critical, more objects in the foreground, middle ground, and far background are in focus. And don't forget, especially when your subject's really boring like me, it's very handy to find a nice foreground object to sort of pep up the picture.
With a wide angle setting on your zoom lens, the background and foreground are more in focus compared to the telephoto position. As we zoom in, the background becomes soft, allowing a blend of color behind our model. And as we change focus, you can see the shallow depth of field.
If you're one of those people who's vexed by the beautiful video you see on network television and a little bit disappointed in your home video shots, you should know that an incredible amount of care goes into most network shots. Care is taken to observe the subject, the thing you're looking at, as well as every element in the background and the foreground. Now, we came out here just to shoot a couple of simple hints and tricks and discover we're completely beat. For instance, if you look up, I've got the classic, the telephone pole sticking right out of my head. An expensive production would move the pole. Smaller production might move the camera. We're small enough that we simply move the person. Now, the lighting's much better here. I don't have a pole coming out of my head, nice tree, except we didn't come here to talk about that. We came to talk about this. This nice castle in the background. Now, unfortunately, with the castle, we're really beat because that gray, cloudy sky is extremely bright, and the castle is also brighter than my face, and my face, of course, is the darkest thing in the scene. We could solve my facial problem with a big reflector or a big light. Unfortunately, big reflector's not going to work too well because there's not enough sun to use it, and a big light, well, we didn't bring one. So we decided to set the exposure for the castle, which of course puts me in silhouette, so I switched to voiceover. And now, as far as that hot white sky goes, well, I don't know about you, but I always have a branch in my back pocket. And it also hides those ugly electrical utility wires. We're constantly amazed at what kind of great pictures you can get with modern cameras just using whatever light happens to be laying around. Now, two important notes about what's to follow. One, we've put our expensive $40,000 broadcast camera on auto exposure for this. And believe me, auto exposure on expensive cameras doesn't work as well as it does on consumer cameras, so we're going to have to play with it a little bit. The other thing is, I've got a monitor, and I'm going to have to keep referring to it. But you should have a monitor, too, whenever you're doing anything experimental that might involve light quality or color. It's always a great idea to see what it's going to look like on the TV set. So remember to hook your camera to the TV set. Okay, get rid of that studio light. Phooey. All right. This is the honest available light we found sitting in this room. We were originally going to tell you about how to solve problems in this. And then we had a closer look at it. Like we have blue light coming in the window and tungsten light coming from this table lamp. But rather than correct for it, we decided we like it. Take a look at this camcorder. This is also a available camcorder. It happened to be sitting on the table. Look at that product shot. I've seen 25 people spend half a day trying to light a product to look as pretty as that. And the mixture of light between the blue and amber of the tungsten really helps it out. Then there's my face. Okay, this is where we should be using a consumer camcorder. Our exposure difficulty here is the fact we have all that white in the background and the auto exposure is getting fooled. A consumer camcorder would have fixed this shot by now, but I have to help out the auto iris model here. If I just fill in some of that white and block it from it, the iris comes up. This is a really good technique to remember because you'll find that if you have too much bright stuff behind a person and you're using available light, often the quickest thing you can do is zoom in a touch or reframe a little bit to get rid of some of that white and then let the auto iris come up. Okay, we're going to go out on the street now with some of the consumer cameras, and we're going to go on the hunt for available light and see if we can make any interesting sort of nice looking pictures with free light. One of the great things about modern video equipment is that it's so sensitive it opens up whole new worlds of shooting. Dark places and night scenes, of course. Now we're shooting this entire scene just with some free light that we found spilling out of a bright restaurant here on the corner. In other situations, because the equipment's so sensitive, you can think in new ways of using lighting. For instance, this is your ordinary, regular house flashlight. Now, the light from a normal flashlight is usually pretty harsh, but a couple layers of wax paper put on it will smooth that out in tight situations. Now, if you need a slightly more formal arrangement, there are just dozens and dozens of top-of-the-camera lights for sale. This one is a mere 10 watts, but even in these situations, it's usually all you need. Well, let's go shoot some night video.
This entire section was shot with home video equipment. The motorbike was shot with gain up. Notice the streaky, blurry effect. I like it. Pictures like these often don't look so hot in a little black and white viewfinder, but you'll usually be pleasantly surprised when you play them back. Hey, this would make a good assignment. Choose your own music.
In 20 years of shooting film and video, the ability now to shoot almost reality at night is like one of the most exciting things I've ever witnessed. Remember, it doesn't have to be a cityscape that you're shooting. There are lots of low-light situations. Oil refineries at night, fireworks at night, moonlight on the lake, a fireside scene, or even a campfire. Probably a good project to try to go shoot some low-light video, see what your camera does and how it performs, and look around the house for things you already own that are perfect now for lighting for these new sensitive cameras. Don't forget to try candles.
Using available light from the table lamp, you can get this shot. Your viewfinder might say low light, but if you can see it, shoot it. This pumpkin is lit with one candle. Compare how bright it is to a flashlight. You can use the flashlight to highlight the pumpkin. For this Halloween scene, we're just using available light from inside the house. Outside the house, we got a dramatic shot using car headlights. You could use car headlights around a campfire or for any of those outdoor scenes where you don't have illumination.
With most camcorders, you'll be at the mercy of an auto exposure system. Now that isn't as terrible as it sounds because the auto exposure systems on most cameras work perfectly. Right now, this one's got a great exposure of the harbor and the bright sky behind me. Unfortunately, it doesn't know that I'm the most important thing in the picture, so I'm kind of dark. There's several things you can do when this happens. One is find a location that's better. Here, the background is darker, so the auto exposure system comes up and you can see my face better. Now, you often can't get away with that. Sometimes you'll be photographing a street vendor or maybe someone giving an angry, impromptu political speech on the street. You can't ask them to move. A lot of cameras have a switch called backlight for that, and pushing it will also force the auto exposure system up a little bit. However, your best alternative is a reflector.
These portable reflectors have different textures, a bright silver or gold shiny side and a softer white side. You can make your own reflector out of aluminum foil. Great for frying a human being, so be careful. Also experiment with your own backlight button and exposure control to find other ways to solve this contrast problem.
Here's one of those situations where your camcorder manual is going to be no help. Look it up in troubleshooting. It's called shooting directly into window with no additional lights. And the manual will just say, forget it. Well, they can't put everything in the manual. This, for instance, is just some tinfoil on a piece of cardboard. I can use it to make use of the sunlight, which is our only light, to reflect some of it back.
I can also use the other side of this homemade reflector, which is just white cardboard, to cast less light, but a more pleasing sort of a soft light. Using reflectors has one little quirk. The sun moves quite rapidly in the sky, and you'll be constantly adjusting them. You may wish to use a light fixture then instead of a reflector, but be aware that tungsten lights have a totally different color than daylight. You'll need to do something to match them. On our studio fixtures, we use a blue color correcting gel to make up that color difference. However, if you don't want to invest in something so elaborate, you can buy a simple blue photo flood bulb. These are quite effective and match daylight quite well. Okay, ready with the photo flood. The exposure is set for outside. The photo flood gives a nice soft light. Depending on which way the person looks, the lighting is affected. If she's looking right at the light, then her face takes on a different look. Outside is a lot brighter than inside. If you have to go from bright to dark, either use the auto iris or ride the exposure manually. Here the lighting's fairly even because we're close to the window. Not bad for free light. Window light or natural light is perfect for good quality lighting, providing the light is strong enough to give you enough depth of field. The lighting is similar to a Renaissance painting. The darkness in the background gives the person visual prominence. With this one light source, we have shadows, which give the picture contrast and dramatic mood. You'll find that you'll be using the window light a lot. For instance, photographing a baby whose eyes are sensitive to the light. Use a window light with a sheer translucent curtain to soften it. Here the window light wasn't strong enough to shoot this birthday. We supplemented the scene using a 1000 watt quartz light with a blue gel added to balance it for daylight. You could also try bouncing the light off the ceiling. You know, if you still have any friends and family left at this point that you can still annoy with your experimentation, you might try a little painting with light. We're just going to see all the different positions of this light and what it can do. I guess the first point is this is a rotten place for a light unless you're trying to make somebody appear ghoulish. You know, anywhere kind of below the eye line tends to really bring out all sorts of weird features. All right, Karina's still here, so we're going to paint with light. Now that's not bad. Some of the things I can do are to raise the light higher and lower. And it's interesting when we cross that line, I'm just about at her eye level now. Cross that line, and now it starts to appear like a horror movie. Back up. I think that's because the sun always comes from above, and that's why we consider it natural. Okay, here we go around now. Looking less dramatic. I'm about to block the lens, so I'll do a quick cross. About the same, only mirror imaged. Around. This should be getting pretty moody. Now we have the mysterious woman. And what do we go? After a mystery, I guess we go through distress, then anonymity. Yes, I first robbed my first bank when I was 12. I think we'll just try. The backlight sort of works when it comes from below. Ooh, that's kind of interesting with her hair. And back out of anonymity through that mysterious phase I haven't. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Identified. And back around again. Okay, yeah, it was kind of fun. You should set up a monitor and a light in your camera and do a little painting with light yourself. Next, I think we'll paint her with dead fish. This is a quartz bulb. Don't touch it with your bare hands. See, the oil from your fingers damages the special glass. That's why I'm wearing gloves. The other good reason to wear gloves is because the lamps get darn hot. Some quartz lamps can be focused from flood to spot. You can put diffused material in front of the light for a softer effect. Scrims in front of the light will reduce its brightness. Barn doors are useful for shaping the light and reducing flares. Be careful of light spill out the side of the light. Another way to diffuse the light is to bounce it off a ceiling or wall. Quartz lights come in a variety of sizes. This small 250 watt light can be changed to a 30-watt battery-operated light. It comes with barn doors and a focusing ring for flood or spot. For portable power, this 12-volt battery pack straps to your waist to power a small lamp on top of the camcorder. To check my color balance and lighting, I sometimes use a small color monitor. It also beats looking through a viewfinder for a long period of time. As an assignment, hook up a TV monitor to your camcorder and experiment with color balance. Try various lighting techniques from daylight to tungsten. Go out and photograph portraits of people. And when you get bored of people, create a 4-minute visual essay on something else. Animals. A historical theme. You think it up.
Well, that's it. That's the end of this half hour. But it's just the beginning of photographic techniques for video. We'll have more in a later show. Hope you're getting to do some of those assignments. See you next time. Well, actually, I won't see you next time. You'll see me. So I guess I shouldn't end by saying see you. I should end by saying see me. Have you got one of these? You know how to use it? Want to learn how to use it better? Think it's just for home movies? There's enough consumer video equipment available right now for you to start your own television station. Welcome to Successful Home Video. In this program, we're going to tackle sound recording, whether it's simple location sound recording or whether you're trying to build up a soundtrack in editing, whether you're trying to record special effects or invent your own special effects. And throughout the program, we'll look at different techniques for recording different kinds of sounds. And as well, we're going to have a look at travel videography. And there'll be some assignments you can try at your leisure. You have been trying these assignments at your leisure, haven't you? You know, sound can add an incredible dimension and a lot of benefits and dynamics to the video image. It wasn't too long ago that TV sets came with a speaker about this big, remember? Didn't matter how big the darn TV set was, the speaker was this size. Well, thank goodness manufacturers came to their senses and started to bundle some very good sound systems inside home TV sets. Of course, that puts the onus on us home videographers to learn how to record good sound.
Originally, film-type home movies didn't have sound. With the advent of video recording, sound was easy to add. Sound adds an incredible dimension to the picture, and depending on where the sound comes from, the sound can direct your attention. Try to get really good sound. Be aware of the position of the microphone. The closer, the better. You should also consider the type of microphone used and the recording level. Too high will distort. Are you recording in stereo? Good sound also depends on the playback equipment that you have. If you still don't think that sound's important, try watching TV with the sound off. There are additional mics you can get for your camcorder. The lavalier is great for attaching to a lapel or sweater and can be used for interviews. You can use a wireless mic that gives you freedom of movement. The PZM microphone picks up sounds from a wide area and can be used in meetings, concerts, and stage shows. There are a wide variety of handheld mics. There can be a distracting noise, though, from hand-holding movement. Good ones are designed to minimize that. You can also attach a more sensitive directional mic to your camcorder. Wherever possible, wear headphones to monitor your sound.
You know, after 20 years of working with some mighty expensive microphones, I'm constantly amazed at how good camcorder microphones are and how good their performance is. You're hearing me right now via this microphone on a stick. It's a cousin of the ones that are on most camcorders. It's a directional microphone. It hears things in the direction it's pointed and rejects things that come from the sides and the back. Now, even though this happens to be a very expensive one, it probably costs as much as your camcorder did, there are still certain irrefutable laws of physics that come into play. This microphone wants to be close. It needs a really good ratio between the noise from my lips and any background noise. If I back off and we crank the sound up a bit, you'll see. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on your microphone, it's going to hear what it's pointed at. Now, the reason we like it on a stick is not only to keep it close, but also to control the angle it's pointing. If this were like a camcorder microphone pointed horizontally, it'd be pointed right at the offending background noise. And we sometimes find that raising them up and pointing them at the ground works, and often we use them back down there, pointing up at the sky. Now, even though you can't control some of the things in your shooting situation with sound, there's something pretty simple you can do with a directional microphone. Just endeavor to shoot in a direction where the background noise source is behind the microphone. Now, if you don't want to be stuck working with a microphone on a stick, you can get radio microphones. There are various available. The transmitter and small lavalier microphone goes on the person who's talking, and the receiver gets velcroed onto the camcorder. Radio mics will introduce you to a whole new world of physical effects and laws of the universe, like radio frequency interference and restricted bandwidth. They do, however, offer you an incredible amount of freedom while you're shooting, and I use them myself. But somehow, when we want really good sound, we always seem to come back to that microphone on a stick.
In certain situations, a camcorder microphone isn't sufficient, so you might consider using a different external microphone, provided that your camcorder has an input for it. Some camcorders record stereo, and surprisingly good single-piece stereo mics are available. Another way to make use of the stereo is to consider it two different mono tracks. You could record two different mics in two different locations and pick the sound you like later.
Okay, for your next assignment, we want to have you try to make some sort of a music video. Now, let's keep the first one kind of simple. We're going to avoid editing and laying in sound later and all the problems of synchronization that'll have. We'd like you to make a continuous roll, you know, where you start the music and then either keep that camcorder moving from place to place or keep different things coming in front of it, and be wild. Use colored gelatin on the lights if you like, and use odd lights and turn the thing upside down. Have a ball. But it'll be all on one continuous roll. Now, the best way to do this is to get a boom box with line outputs and hook it right to the camcorder. To do that, you need one of these. This little red thing's an attenuator, and it allows the relatively high-level output of the line out on the boom box to connect into the microphone socket on the camera. While you're out buying adapters, get a Y cord too, so you can put the left and right channels together so you can hear all those instruments that are on the piece of music. Okay, you're ready. The reason to find a boom box with line outputs is that obviously you're carrying it around the house so that people can dance to it or lip sync to it. You've got to be able to hear it. And the louder the better, by the way, for the performance. You can't use the earphone socket to extract the sound out for your camcorder because that kills the speakers. So you have to find one that does have line output things and connect it right to the camcorder. And that way you'll have excellent sound recorded on the camera. Well, what are you sitting there for? Come on. Ready, aim, sing. All right, we promised a travel video. It's time for the travel video. Now, we're going to look at our travel video, and we've decided to edit and add music and narration and some effects. The reason we decided to go with that kind of editing approach to it is it's kind of difficult to plan a travel video. You don't know what's going to happen, and you often haven't been to the location before. A little research can help. Read up on where you're going. It may give you some ideas of some stuff you want to take or some side trips you might want to make. Okay, stuff you need to take. First, root through that cupboard and find the lightest, most durable camera bag you can, because it's going to be on your shoulder a lot. There's no point in carrying the big metal box around. Stuff to put in it. Don't forget the charger. Then, don't forget the charger. That's two don't forget the chargers. One is don't forget to take it on your holiday. The other is don't forget it in the hotel room. It's always the last thing you leave plugged in. A strap for the camera. Remember that strap that came with the camera a couple years ago and it's still in the basement in the box? Well, go root it out, because it's great to hang the camera from your shoulder when all the blood goes out of your hand because you've been holding the camera like that all day. Lens cleaning. There's a good chance that you might end up shooting in the rain because you can't pick the weather on your vacation and you're stuck. You don't want to not shoot. And all those little dried rain pellets, they can really wreck a shot if they're stuck on the front element of the lens, especially when you're shooting something bright or right into the sun. Oh yeah, tapes. Now, don't make the mistake I did last time. I was going to a geographical location where tapes were going to be a lot cheaper than they are where I live. So I said, I'll buy my tapes when I get there. I went to that geographical location and they'd never heard of my kind of camcorder. I only ever found one dusty tape in a little obscure video store, and I had to use it sparingly. Favorite filters, if any? In my case, a twinkle filter, star filter, and a filter that will make a dull gray sky blue, and a graduated filter that will make a sunset more spectacular. That's in case the weather is a bomb. You can at least make your friends think you had a good time. This is optional, but it's a radio mic. You may want to pin it on a tour guide. And if you're throwing in optional stuff, don't forget spare batteries for the optional stuff. If you haven't already, this might be a good time to buy that little light that fits on the top of the camera. You might find yourself in spectacular nighttime places where you want to show that the family was standing there along the railing. The light will help fill in their faces. And in case of real rain, if it rains for the whole vacation, clear plastic bag and sticky tape. That's so you can invent some sort of a camera cover. And in case of drizzle, lots of facial tissue. That's, not worth putting the bag around the camera, but you want lots of tissue to keep wiping those little droplets off. And where we live, don't forget the important green piece of paper. See, you have to check with your local customs before you take all this stuff out of the country to make sure they're going to let you back into the country without paying any duties on it. That's it. Okay, holiday time. We're off to Niagara Falls, Canada, where everybody dresses like this, they tell me. Is that the falls?
I figure Niagara Falls has to be about the most photographed place on Earth. 70 billion people can't be wrong, so we came here to do our travelogue. And we brought the most important Niagara Falls camera accessory, a wad of facial tissue, because there's always so much mist in the air. And as well, if I can work it out, I'm going to get some really dramatic shots here of the producer going over the falls in a barrel. There are all kinds of techniques that can make your travel videos more enjoyable to watch. The choice of shots, how you shoot and edit. Are you going to add music and narration later? You might want to record your comments as you shoot. Why not bring back a travel video masterpiece? It just takes a little extra care and thinking of how you can obtain the best shot. This shot of the falls was done using a tripod. The slow, steady pan illustrates the vastness and power of the falls. We've also added a sunset filter. If I stop talking, maybe you can even hear it too. To fit the falls into the full frame with my lens, I have to go further away. Always look for better vantage points. Get a variety of shots with different angles, and try to come up with a storyline or theme for your travel video. Well, I'm still working myself up to that over the falls in a barrel shot, but I've got enough guts now to go on the boat that goes down in the mist. But first, I'm going to have to take some precautions with the camera because
electronics and expensive optics really hate mist and moisture.
Some camcorders can take interchangeable lenses. I'm taking off the telephoto lens and replacing it with a standard lighter lens. Not so much for a different shot, but because I'll be hand-holding and it's easier with the lighter lens. I'm removing the lens sunshade ring, so when I place the plastic bag over the camcorder, I can cut a perfect hole for the lens. Now I simply pry out the plastic and there you have it, or there I have it. Duct tape's great to seal and attach the plastic to the lens. Hopefully the water won't leak in. Remember, you do this at your own risk. Here's the viewfinder hole. This is by no means waterproof. You can purchase underwater housings for your camcorder, but what the heck, this should work. I was finally on my way to one of the 7 wonders of the world. Would we survive? Would it rain? Music, along with a narrating style, can set the mood of your travel video. Let's change that music for a different feel. Now I feel I'm on holiday. If you're in a faraway country, you might want to bring back some distinctive music of that culture. Editing later can make your videos more interesting and enjoyable. Those tissues, they came in mighty handy. Just a word of caution. You can get carried away shooting and not realize the dangers. If you're not careful, you could ruin your holiday. Later, you can edit your video with different angles. Don't forget to get more close-ups than wide shots. Sometimes it's nice to lower the music so that you can hear the natural sounds. Now we have to find a way of ending this sequence. We're going to back time our music so that it ends on the final shot.
You know, there's the falls, and then there's the other Niagara Falls. It'd be a shame not to include the town, but I find that if you walk around with a heavy, bulky, expensive-looking camera sometimes, people get a little intimidated. So I've decided to just bring the palmcorder along and stick it in people's faces and see what kind of stuff we get.
Oh, that reminds me, I gotta call my dentist. With a little light narration and some in-camcorder effects, we might have some fun here. We're looking for a variety of shots, just a few seconds long, that tell the story of Main Street. Sometimes you can stand in one place and look around, find several shots to shoot from there.
It's a good way to spy on people using a mirror. They never expect if they see your camcorder pointed in the mirror that you're actually shooting them. You know, this saves having to buy a bunch of postcards. Now, actually, it's always good to check the postcards in a tourist location because you get an idea of what professional photographers have taken and where the areas of interest are.
You'll find that the camcorder will get you walking all over the place.
Oh. My eyes are wider angled than my camera.
To make this shot fit in the viewfinder, I went across the street and used a truck as a tripod. Wherever possible, you should try to have a steady shot. A tripod's the best thing, but if you don't have one handy, just improvise.
Nice thing about Niagara Falls, they have all these free tripods on the street. Now for my next shot, I think I'm going to go to full wide angle and fix my focus at infinity. Actually, it's a great street. I mean, it's got evil and murder and torture. Of course, none of it compares to the torture I'm going to put all my friends through watching my home video. Picture, please. Okay, it's time to spruce up some of our travel footage with music and narration. Now, there are going to be a couple times I have to stop and tell you something. This is one of them. When we're editing sound using VHS machines, you may have heard that there are a lot of soundtracks. There are 2 stereo tracks plus this linear track that runs along the edge of the tape. Well, for a lot of reasons, to all intents and purposes, when you're editing using an editing pair, you really can only edit using the linear track. So everything I'm about to do is based on machines that seemingly only have 1 soundtrack. It's because of that. This is going to be a bit like a cooking show. You know, the cake's already in the oven, it's already baked, we just have to pull it out and frost it. It's because I had to do a lot of preparation for this that would have been tedious to watch. I had to find and cue music, I had to pre-cut some scenes together. They're in the recorder right now. What I have on this tape are some scenes that tell the story visually, and it's a little short, I didn't want to bore you. If this were really my vacation footage, I might have made it a bit longer. And accompanying those scenes are source noises, noises that kind of go along with them, you know, rushing water and the people on the boat. Okay, I've got that. Now, in goes a fresh tape. I'm essentially going to re-record what I've done, adding the stuff I want to add. Now, I also have to tell you about the music that I chose for this piece. You're going to say, why did you choose that music? Well, it actually wouldn't have been my first choice, but we sell these programs and we have to worry very seriously about copyright. We're using a portion of a classical recording that we already have permission to use from an earlier segment in the show. So it happened to be around, it was handy, we'll use it. You have to worry about copyright as well because the laws are pretty strict. So be careful, don't just pick your favorite song to lay down on a videotape. Especially, you may think if you're just doing the video for free for a club or a bunch of friends, that it's okay. It strictly, according to law, isn't. There are a lot of sources, though, in the advertising the backs of consumer magazines where you can get music that you can purchase and own the copyright to use in your videos. Okay, enough warnings. Let's mix the darn sound. Now, all of my audio comes towards this mixer. And what we have is the source noises that I edited along with the picture, stuff that goes with the boat stuff. I've got my music from an audio cassette, and this mixer has sort of a disco switch with a microphone. You can push a button and talk. It's my narration microphone. This mixer is a little bit more mixer than you might require. It will handle quite a few different inputs and mix them, and it has a built-in echo thing that's a lot of fun to play with. The thing to look for in a mixer, though, even in a smaller one, is some sort of equalizer. And if not a full graphic equalizer, just a bass and treble control, because you'll find that your camera mic often picks up wind noise, which is very bassy, and being able to crank down some bass often improves it dramatically. On goes the headset. Now, this is because I have a narration mic that's going to be live, and if I had the speakers on, it would howl. And why do you put the headset on over the back of your head, Dave? That's because we don't want the wire, which is attached to the headset, to hit my mic and keep making this annoying noise. Okay, I think I'm ready. Everything's cued. Review. This all happens in real time. That's the music on line 2, that's the source noises on line 1, and that's my mic. Now, through the magic of post-production, you'll probably actually hear this mix as it progresses, even though there are no speakers really on in this room. Record. And I'm just going to check this. For a reason I'm going to tell you later, I've edited a small little bloop of the time and date a couple seconds before my piece began. It might come in handy later. I don't intend to ever show that to my audience. Oop. I've blown it, so I just back up a little bit. It was rolling. Oh, I have to go back to the bloop. Right. If you need the bloop, you need the bloop. Okay, ready. This starts with source noises. Oh, and then roll the music when you see the picture. Even though the music isn't on yet, I timed it from the first picture. Now I sneak the music in. Ready narration.
Thank you and enjoy your trip.
Maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. click. Sort of makes you wonder what the first person to come around the bend in a canoe thought. Hey, I could get some boats and take tourists here. And then you shut everything off. Now, what I've created over here on the record machine, I'm just going to check it to make sure I really did record it. I won't play the whole thing again. Oop, there's that mic on. Okay. I'll just check my narration.
On the bend in the canoe
Yep,
thought.
okay. That was all recorded. What I've created here, though, has a third generation picture. What that means is the tape that was in my camera was first generation. That's the first recording. Then when I edited my camera tape to make the video sequence, I got to second generation. It's been re-recorded once. It's looking a little... Now that I've re-recorded the whole works to get my soundtrack, I've created third generation video, which on some systems is getting on the edge of acceptability. The thing I could do at this point is to take my third generation sound and picture, put it over here, and my second generation original master edited thing, put it in the recorder, cue up to that little bloop that I left at the beginning that I never intended the audience to see, synchronize them, and re-record, re-edit only the sound from here to there, so that the tape that I can then show will have a second generation picture, although it'll have third generation sound. It's quite an acceptable technique and can be made to work. There is only one warning about that, though. The synchronism you can expect is not absolute perfect. So if you have people who are moving their lips and talking, you have to be very careful because they might end up talking like this, and you'll never be able to get it back right.
One of the great things about the consumer video revolution is that no stone's been left unturned, and there are all sorts of ways now you can get sound effects into your own video productions. This is a little box with close to 100 variations on sound effects built in, and you access them by the keyboard. Now, you should pay attention to sound effects because not only can they enhance what's actually going on in your video, but they can actually change your perception of what's happening off screen. We got a little demo here. I'll just hand that to a coworker. Ready? For an assignment, go out and make a short visual essay. Add music, narration, and effects.
You know, there's an incredible amount of stuff to shoot at a theme park, but the professionals in Hollywood know that scheduling and planning is the most important. So don't forget a little scheduling and planning when you're just out taking shots. Dolphin show.
Timing is everything, and you always have to be prepared to get shots when least expected. Like these people getting wet. These are the kinds of things you have to look out for. Sometimes you have to roll the tape before the action begins so that you can get the entire shot.
And I guess this week's assignment is to take a 2-week holiday someplace exotic. Ha! We finally found an assignment maybe somebody will do. And I guess after the end of the show, you'll probably appreciate the job of the sound editor a little bit more. So that's it. Bye. Sound up. Music up.